And we are live. And hey, happy Friday. Happy Pi Day Friday. Happy drama. Welcome, everybody. As you can see, as we've been planned and as we have planned and have been announcing all over the place, we've got a couple of special guests today. I'm so excited. I can't speak. There's not many people here. I'm going to do intros now, but we're probably going to do more intros again later. What do we got here? Oh, wow, we got more than the usual start. Everybody's excited about this. So let me look at the actual feed. There we go. Okay, it mimics here. No, I hate Zoom. If I look at my Zoom page, I'm in the upper right-hand corner and Greg is below me and it's completely scrambled on the output. So at any rate, with the green background is Greg Kurtzer. I won't even begin to list all of his industry credentials, but I will drag them out of him as we go on. Greg at the moment is the founder of Rocky Linux group, organization, whatever. And Skip Grube, almost pale in kind of black and white tones today. From our behind the scenes prep discussion, everything that I had to introduce about you, I am now throwing out the window because I pretty much had you pegged as a coder / administrator. And now you've just thrown me for a curve. So I'm going to open with Greg. Greg, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why I dragged you here.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Greg. I've been really fortunate in my career to have been part of a number of different open source projects and organizations. I spent a long majority of my career working at the U.S. Department of Energy, national labs, and joint appointment to UCOP and UC Berkeley. So I've been just very fortunate and lucky in what I've been able to do and what I've been able to be part of. And now I'm founder and CEO of this little company called CIQ, and an awesome Linux distribution called Rocky Linux, and which I'm part of. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to telling everybody and talking with you more about it.
Outstanding. Thank you for coming, Kurt. Sorry, Greg.
Oh my goodness, you're actually okay. Flashback to high school.
I knew it was about to happen.
All of my teachers. Every one of my teachers used to get me confused with another guy in my class called Kurt. And so we were both just Kurt. So you just totally gave me flashbacks of the early 90s, late 80s. Oh my goodness.
Apologize. I've been typing your name in documents all over the place for the last 3 weeks, and it's the Kurtzler part that comes through. So, all right, glad to bring back a memory. And Skip. Welcome, Skip. So the titles that I had for you basically kind of led me to show coding. I know that you're back.
I'm all over the place.
Is administrating Linux systems, and you moved on from there and became coder extraordinaire and package manager, but I don't even know what some of those terms mean. So fill us in.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So I the way I got into this whole thing, we'll tell the story later. It's quite a story, but
Okay.
Suffice to say, I was very early on hopped on the Rocky Linux project, got very excited about it, and yeah, just started contributing to it more and more and more. A lot of late nights, a lot of packaging work, troubleshooting work. I don't really do much of the infrastructure. I'm kind of out of that game right at the moment anyway, but yeah, there's coding involved, there's all kinds of things involved, and yeah, eventually just recently, actually in the last 6 months, got picked up by CIQ. I'm now a CIQ employee, so I get to do it in part and get paid for it. So it's very nice, very good for me.
All the contributions that you've been doing with the massive amount of projects that I've looked up on you, you pretty much did that on your own time as a voluntary thing?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I've been in Linux in the open source world. Been in the open source world for a long time, not as long as Greg. Greg's definitely got me beat, but yeah, have been a user.
It's age, Skip. It's just because I'm old.
Yeah, no, I'll become old and crotchety eventually. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, definitely just I'm already familiar, obviously, with the Red Hat world and the RPM world, and yeah, it's hopped onto the project and I've learned an awful lot, and it's part of why I'm working on it. Quite frankly, is that I would say my day job just wasn't doing it for me, and I really some of the folks we work with, like technically wise, would blow you away. Like I'd put them up against anyone in the world, quite frankly, for some of this stuff. So it's
Wonderful. Well, all right. So you've opened up the door to the background that not everybody is familiar with, myself included. So you said you're familiar with the Red Hat world, and Rocky is certainly tied to Red Hat and your precursor CentOS and Chaos prior to that. And there are terms like upstream development and downstream development. Here we go. Give us a primer on what Red Hat and what upstream and downstream means, and where Rocky fits into all that. That's an easy one, right?
You want to take this one, Greg, or would you like me to hop in?
You know what? You keep going. I like
Okay.
hearing you talk.
Okay. All right. Let's see. So the story, I'm going to start the story with Rocky first, and then we'll talk about upstream and downstream and all that stuff. So a lot of folks still not familiar with this, but I know I hope a lot of the audience has heard of CentOS Linux. You're familiar with it. And
looking at a guy here on our chat feed, Will Shaw, one of the biggest proponents of CentOS you'll ever run across, and it's why he's here. I know he wants to dig into the world with you.
Absolutely. I also big fan of CentOS Linux. Love it, loved it. I guess if you want to call it that. So it all started in December of 2020. And there was an announcement, and I follow tech news. I was, just a member of the general public, I would say. That's, when there was this big tech announcement that came up that said, oh yeah, by the way, CentOS 8, which is, released in 2019-ish and was, slated to be supported with updates until 2029, right? Same as Red Hat, because they follow the Red Hat release, right? Have for decades now. And they said, oh, this release basically from the CentOS blog says, no, we're going to end in 2021, actually. Like the end of your December 31st, 2021. After that, no more CentOS 8 updates.
Okay.
I see Will's yes, CentOS 7 updated till 2024. I'll gotta look at updating or upgrading soon. But yeah, which it's bizarre, right? Like CentOS 7 continues to 2024. CentOS 8, nope, nothing doing.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, that's not great, because I love CentOS. And what, there's and CentOS Stream, which we'll get into in a second, acts as like almost like a what Red Hat now comes from, but we'll talk about that in a minute. That's going to be the only CentOS.
Sorry,
and so yeah, I looked at this blog thing. Yeah, oh there you go. Yep. And actually, it's still there. And so if you search for GMK on the there you go. Yeah. So I was looking at the comments, because it's something I do sometimes. God help me. And but I saw this thing. It says, I am considering creating another rebuild of RHEL and may be able to hire some people for the effort. And you can come join us in our Slack link in HPCNG. And I was looking at it and was like, huh, that might be cool. And so I went over to the website, and I know that I hopped in probably about 6 or 7 hours after that blog comment was made, right? And I'd never even joined a Slack before. I didn't know, I knew what it was, but I hopped into this Slack channel that he had posted there, and there were 5,000 people in the Slack channel, and they were all talking at once. It was chaos. Like it was just, everyone was like, right, what are we gonna, CentOS is going, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And it was almost like a crowd stream of thought. It was going a mile a minute down the screen. You should have seen it. It was, first thing we did was organize different channels for different things, because with one channel it was like you'd step away for like 30 seconds and you come back, and the conversation you were following, it was 3 pages up, because it was
okay.
It's if you search Twitch plays Pokemon, it was Twitch designs an operating system is what like it was nuts. And so yeah, we from there it was very organic, honestly. We organized, kind of we quickly settled that, hey, the hive mind, I'm going to call it, said, hey, we got to replace Centos because Centos, what people want this and people rely on it and we like it, so let's do it. And so and we divvied ourselves up into different channels. People were like, well, I want to do testing, I'll create the website for it, I'll the reason I ended up where I was actually is because I quickly, caught on to this idea and was excited about it. And I noticed that in the different channels, there's a lot of people that wanted to do testing, a lot of people that wanted to design the logo and to troubleshoot but there were not as many people in the develop and package channel, right?
Okay.
And I was like, well, I know a little bit about that, so I'll join that because, and there was a lot of people that wanted to do infrastructure, like website, web servers and stuff for it, because we have a lot of admins and so forth in the group. But yeah, I was like, man, there's not that many people that actually want to do the engineering work because it's, quite frankly, it sounds easy, right? Oh, you just take the Red Hat sources and rebuild them. But I'm here to tell you, it's a lot more. It's more complicated than it sounds, right?
Okay.
There's a lot that goes into it. And so yeah, I set off. That's how I set off on this wild journey, right? It was pretty crazy.
When you say package management, from what I've come to learn, that sort of exists in two realms. One is the core packages, the core OS packages, the development chains and things like that. And then there's the ancillary packages like porting or changing or modifying Apache 2 so that it works on Rocky or whatever flavor, and then it can go in your repositories. Do I have that roughly right?
Kind of, sort of. So we have, and again, I'm gonna have Greg chime in here soon too. I can tell he has stuff that he wants to talk about as well.
Absolutely. You get
Really, there's the core mission of Rocky Linux, like CentOS before us, is to faithfully recreate the binaries for Red Hat Enterprise Linux, version for version, pound for pound, as closely and most compatible as we can possibly get it. Right. And that way, our entire goal is that every piece of software, if you compile it for Red Hat Enterprise Linux, 8.7 or whatever, it should also work on Rocky Linux 8.7 without modification, no matter what. And if there's a difference between them, we consider that a bug, right? Even if it's like even if the Rocky version is fixed, right? Like if it's somehow better, right? We don't actually want that. We actually want to be a 100% compatible all the way through. But there are, and even that is, difficult, quite frankly, because there's more than 3,000 packages, and you have to build them all, and you have to build them all in, some of them in very particular ways in a very particular order, and so there's all kinds of messiness that gets introduced. But the other side of it is what we call special interest groups. These are folks, and I know you are very interested in the Raspberry Pi, and I'm sure we'll get to that.
Absolutely.
But these are groups that come together and say, hey, we want to enhance this in some way, right? To, add extra stuff to it, extra functionality. Like Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and core Rocky Linux will not boot on the Raspberry Pi, for example, right? You can't just slap it on an image, it won't work.
Right.
And so we have a group around, making that happen, right? And it does, the packages and the things that we produce don't get put into the core, like default Rocky Linux, which is, matches Red Hat exactly. But we have other repositories and so forth that we can add our extras into, right? And there's a whole lot of this stuff. We have a desktop crew that likes to do KDE or Mate images, which are, different desktop environments. And you don't get that if you just install stock Red Hat Enterprise Linux.
Okay.
You will not get KDE. It doesn't exist for it. And so it's and they do things like throw live spins, right, where you can, we have a KDE live version where you can just grab the ISO and boots right to the desktop. Red Hat Enterprise Linux does not have that.
Okay.
And so that's not in core Rocky Linux, but it's part of a special interest group, or SIGs we call them.
I got to pull back for just a second here and point out, there's mostly guys here, but I did see TD Washington here, and I'm not sure who all's what. We got a lot of old timers in here. Mostly everybody's enraptured because we usually have a lot more posts going on. They are all just sitting on the edge of their seats. But I did a presentation one time, sometime last year, about all the various desktops, and tried to put some effort into convincing everybody that it is in fact Mate and not mate. So thank you very much.
It is Mate. I still say mate in my mind a lot, but it comes from a T in Argentina, I think, because that's where the fellow's from. But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me dive into some of my questions here, and we'll hopefully find some stuff that Greg wants to pile in on. This is
Actually, can I jump in? Can I jump in real quick?
I've got water.
So first thing I got to ask Dave, what are you drinking? That looks awesome.
Sorry. There's a trademark here. I wear a different Hawaiian shirt and I drink the same iced tea every show in the same cup. So it's just iced tea with lemon and some kind of keto friendly sweetener. But we've
had some Rocky parties in Zoom where, you know, we encourage people to bring their drinks. We don't record the conversations and whatnot, just in case, because people are drinking, but we get some pretty cool drinks and people even doing shot games and whatnot.
Rocky After Dark.
Yeah. What we'll do today is join the mailing list and see what level of participation I could do. One of the things that I learned about you, Greg, is with your long and glorious career of starting all kinds of organizations. I go back to Chaos. Were you involved in any way with Whitebox?
So I know I remember Whitebox quite a bit. So we were building Chaos Linux. We were focused on a new distribution of Linux that was RPM based, and we even knew right from the beginning we wanted to use we architected the operating system a little bit differently. Not to go on a tangent, but real quick, because this is interesting. We architected the operating system a little bit differently, and what we said was the core of it. We split the core, which we said had to be a completely stable ABI, completely stable base, but all of the packages around this core could change versions. They can update, and so that was kind of how we looked at it. So when we built this core had to be completely self-hosting, completely reproducible, completely rebuildable, and it didn't have everything needed to boot. It didn't have a kernel. It was the user space. So then every other package that we built from there was built inside of this core, and every dependency in the chain had to be specific for each package coming into it. But that core was based on Red Hat way back then. And this is before Red Hat Linux was end of life. So this was before Red Hat Enterprise Linux has really took off. Now, a little while Red Hat ran Red Hat Linux, which was freely available, and then Red Hat Enterprise Linux. They started for some reason with version 2. I don't know why, but right afterwards they came out with version 3.
I got reason why, and I'll talk about on that in a moment.
I want to hear that. And so we were building Chaos Linux, which again was kind of based on Red Hat Linux at the time. The first version was Red Hat Linux. And actually, I may even be off on that. This was a very long time ago. This is 2002, 2003-ish. So, but that's what we were building on. Now, then Red Hat end-of-lifed Red Hat Linux and basically said, if you want to continue using Red Hat, you have to go use Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And that affected obviously what we were doing, and it affected, a number of people. So we were still kind of talking about this and trying to figure out what's the best bet for us, when all of a sudden there was a Slashdot post of Whitebox Enterprise Linux kind of coming into the world. So the first rebuild of Red Hat that I know of was in fact Whitebox Enterprise Linux.
Okay.
And for some reason I'm forgetting the person's name. I'm forgetting the person's name who was running it, but he came out of he worked at a library, a parish library, and I don't remember exactly where it was now. But oh, very cool. Yeah, so he came out of a library and hosted this out of the library using the library's resources. And it immediately took off to such magnitude that Slashdot hit it. And back in the day, we used to talk about things getting Slashdotted, and Whitebox got Slashdotted so badly that nobody could even see what a project was, because there was all the servers were down because they couldn't keep up. And so we talked about it, and I reached out to the maintainer and I said, does it make sense for us to work together? This is an interesting project. Here's what we're doing and whatnot. I didn't get a response from him for quite some time, probably due to just the fact of how much he was dealing with. And then after a little while, he basically said, I'm doing this for us and for the library. I didn't anticipate this being a giant, massive thing that where I'm maintaining this for the whole world. So if you want to do something, here, you got my thumbs up. So we decided, well, we already have build infrastructure. We already have developers and engineers. Let's go and start building this. So the first person who started working on this was a gentleman named Rocky McGaw. And Rocky, he was deep into high performance computing and high performance clusters, HPC. And he was already doing.
Sorry here, but I know how close you and Rocky were, and there's a lot of press about that. And I am sorry for your loss and for Linux's loss.
He was a huge fan of open source. Everybody that knew him knew he loved the community. And in person, he was a shy guy, but he was brilliant, loved open source. And so he basically said, look, I've been doing this already for the community, excuse me, for my company, for the community for some time. And we had a few other people that were also involved in the project and were doing that previously for their companies. And he basically said, so I can start this if you want, and we can start rebuilding this, and we can leverage then those packages for Chaos Linux as well, those core packages. So we were like, yeah, that's fantastic. Didn't even have a name for the project, so we just called it Chaos EL for Enterprise Linux.
Okay.
And he started working on version 3, and he was going about it, and he kind of heads down, just chugging away at this. He gets to the point where he's about 99% done, and I refreshed myself on some of these old mailing list posts from the archive, just so I can remember what happened in all of this. And yeah, he was about 99% done. We announced the name change to Centos,
right?
And so Chaos EL became Centos, and I was leading the project, and we continued it up. We continued it, but at some point we get this weird message in IRC. Somebody joins IRC, didn't recognize the name, and she self-identified herself as Rocky's girlfriend, and to tell us that Rocky has passed away. And it was incredibly, as you can probably imagine, awkward and weird aspect. So especially considering he was just about done. And so we had some other people kind of take over. Guy named Lance Davis took over for version 3. John Newbegin was doing version 2 at the time, which started after version 3. And we were able to get everything released and get it out there. But Rocky never got to see what was to become of his initial work and where Centos would go. And knowing him
to a tragedy.
Knowing him, that would have been just amazing for him, and he would have loved that. So it's funny, on the early days of Rocky Linux, before we had a name, somebody asked me, they said, what happened with Centos? Like, how did it start? And I was telling the story as we were talking, and all of a sudden it just hit me. It was like, that's it. That's the name of the project. And it's meant as a tribute in honor of what he did, but also the fact that he never got to see it. And that always broke my heart. So
No
I
doubt.
wanted him to, yeah, so I wanted to dedicate it to him. And every single person that heard the story there seconded it and was like, yes, that's it. And then every person since then always said, you know, can we rename the project?
Oh,
Not changing the
And we
name.
don't like the name of the project because they didn't hear the backstory of it. They didn't know why were we calling it Rocky. And so we had to, for the first 6 months to a year, Skip, how many times did we hear the same
We
thing?
still get it sometimes.
it's amazing.
Okay, very occasionally, somebody will be like, "Well, I like your Linux distro, but the name's really weird. Do you guys ever think about changing that?"
Oh,
No, like, it's
That's so odd
way
because
too late.
when it happened, you guys wrote about that or answered it in an interview, and it was addressed right off the bat. I would think that that's as common knowledge.
Well, people wander in. They don't, not everyone's the most informed, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But
You know, Skip,
yes.
for a while, we even had it on the front page of RockyLinux.org.
You
Right
said
there,
we are not
it was
changing the name. Like,
it was like the even the message that I sent was
that's
like,
true.
there,
Yeah. And
the
that
quote.
was it was funny because I remember this moment and what I was talking about in the Slack channel that we had joined, and this was like a couple days in, and there was still chaos because it was, a million people all talking at once. And yeah, that was, I think we had a whole channel dedicated to what do we want to name the project or something, or maybe it was just general, but there were so
Oh,
many suggestions. I had a suggestion that I don't even remember what it was, but I'm pretty sure it was stupid. And finally, Greg's like, well, I knew this guy who was original, basically bootstrapped original Centos, and he passed away, and everybody was like it was funny because you get 5,000 voices, and it's very rare that you can get them to all agree on so, but literally everyone was like, that's the name. Like, so it was a moment there, and we were just like, that's going to be the name. So
Not to detract from that, but let me go backward for a second, because I never did read anything about where Centos got its name.
Oh, so that name was coined by, I mentioned Lance Davis. He came up with the name, and yeah, he proposed it to me, and we went back and forth on this for a little bit, because I said, this is a funny story. I said, I really like the name Centos. I said, but I really hate separating the OS from Cent. So I don't like Cent OS.
Okay.
Right? But Centos, doesn't matter. But the reason why is at this point in my life, I was incredibly pedantic and annoying and whatnot. And a cent is cheap, but it's infinitely more expensive than free, which is what it was intended to be.
Nice.
And so if you separate out the OS and you have now OS and you have Cent, and it means something. And I said, that's not what it is. It is Community Enterprise Operating System, and just say the whole thing through. And however it turned out to be, I don't know. We went through a bunch of logos, but the logo that was prominent was Cent and with OS capital. And from that point on, name was a mix mash of Centos, and CentOS. And for a little while there, I had some grumpiness around that, but and then I got more mature and grew up a little bit, just a little bit.
Well, okay, so Centos is an upstream distro. Rocky is a downstream. Can you tell us what that means?
So I'll take the first bit, and then I'm going to hand it over to Skip to fix everything I said that's wrong. So Centos started off in the early days, and this might be important later in our discussion, so I'll mention this. Centos was always a very small team, and it was a small team because of the security implications of what it was we were doing and how to manage that. Now we call it the supply chain security of each one of those packages, but back then it was just, how do we manage the private keys, right? We can't give everybody the private keys, and people were building it literally on their own systems, their own workstations, their own desktops and whatnot. So we had to kind of manage the control structure of security. And the way to do that, the easiest way of doing that is just to keep your circle of trust very small. And so Centos in the early days, was a very small number of people, and that persisted for a very long period of time. And as I completely went down that track, I forgot your question. Dave, remind me your question again. Oh yeah. Where is it? Where is it? Okay. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
So I need more coffee. So
There.
so when we first started doing this, we were literally logged into and we purchased Red Hat Network subscriptions, and we were downloading the software, piece by piece from the Red Hat network. Now, a little bit later, we were able to also download it from an FTP server that we were able to get access to. But initially, it came right out of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Like there was nothing else. At that point, Fedora didn't even exist. This was just Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Red Hat engineers and developers created those packages, did all the patching, everything, put it all together, and then released their source RPMs, either via FTP or the Red Hat network. So we would log into that and download these bits of source code, the patches, the source RPMs, the specs, everything that we needed to go and start the build process. To Skip's point, it's never as easy as just going, RPM rebuild on the source RPM. If you're going for binary output that is mirroring another binary, you have to mirror that entire build infrastructure. Which is difficult. And there's a lot of, and Skip will, I'm sure, talk about this here in just a little bit more. So Centos was always downstream. It was always kind of Red Hat Enterprise Linux was in front, Centos was below. Later, Fedora came along, and Fedora came out highly in front, very far in front, and then and then Red Hat, and then Centos. Now, Skip, correct me if I'm wrong on any of these dates, or approximate dates relative, but at about when CentOS 8 was released, there was also something released called CentOS Stream, which gave the ability to kind of see into newer versions of packages. And so you can install CentOS and you can activate Stream as a repository. Now, what the announcement was that we just showed the blog post was that CentOS Linux is going away, but CentOS Stream is continuing and kind of taking over, and it's going to be in front of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, or more pedantically, between Fedora and RHEL, but much closer to RHEL. And the goal of it, as it was initially advertised, and somebody's going to comment on this, and I know it because it happens all the time, but it was originally kind of messaged to the world as a rolling release. And it's always just been kind of perpetually updated, yes, and perpetually updated, and you can go grab a snapshot, but they are going to do snapshots for installers and whatnot, but it is a rolling release. I've also heard people at Red Hat call it a beta. I've heard people at Red Hat call it, where they're going with it, kind of like preview release. So there's been a lot of names for it, and there's been a lot of confusion in the messaging for it. But all in all, what it is it is a community kind of look, I'm going to use this word also loosely, look ahead of what's coming. And it gives us the ability now to sync into Stream and to see what's coming into Red Hat Enterprise Linux from Stream. And the same tags, and again, Skip, I'm expecting to correct me, the same tags that RHEL uses are represented in the Stream Git repos. So we can pull from the same exact tags that Red Hat Enterprise Linux is pulling from, and then use that as our mirror source. So it went from behind RHEL to now in front of RHEL, kind of.
Interesting.
Skip,
like that.
Skip, how did I do on that? Just rank me.
You were close. 9 points out of 10. Yeah, that's the gist of it, really. I think that it's important to distinguish, because a lot of people get confused. And there's, again, the naming is weird. I have no right to talk about naming, though. I've named things terrible in the past. CentOS Stream. They're similar, but they are different things, right? They are not the same. CentOS Stream, as Greg said, is kind of a Red Hat Enterprise preview. It's stuff in the versions in CentOS Stream will be in RHEL in about a year's time, maybe we're talking 6 to 18 months, somewhere in there, depending on the time of year. And he's quite right when he says that it's It's a rolling release within major versions. So CentOS Stream is, excuse me, I'm talking about CentOS Stream now, where so CentOS Stream 8, there is no CentOS Stream 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, etc. The packages just roll in. Updates happen, kind of organically almost.
Okay.
But CentOS 8 Stream does not roll into CentOS 9 Stream, right? And that's where the confusion comes in, because when people think rolling distro, they think, oh, it's like Arch Linux, right? Arch Linux is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 99% sure Arch Linux is a true rolling release distro. They have, there's Arch Linux, and there's no Arch Linux 10 or Arch Linux 11 or whatever. It's just packages, and they continuously get updated, according to the dev team schedule. And but CentOS Stream, not like that. CentOS Stream 8 is rolling release within the bounds of 8, and CentOS Stream 9 is rolling release within the bounds of 9, but they do not cross over each other, right? Like you can't go from, CentOS Stream 8 does not roll into 9. It doesn't work like that.
Okay.
So that's where it's kind of, I would say rolling release within a major version, kind of half rolling release, if you can think about it that way. Whereas Red Hat Enterprise Linux and Rocky Linux, the rebuild of it, is very segmented. We have Rocky Linux 9.0, 9.1. There will be a 9.2, a 9.3, etc. And they still roll, right? In the case of where if I'm sitting at my console and I do a DNF update, which is our update command, and I'm on 9.0, our latest right now is 9.1. I will get 9.1 automatically, right?
Oh,
But
that's you're going to do a DNF dist intro or a DNF, dist. It's just a DNF update or a DNF upgrade. Not a dist upgrade.
there's no special thing, and there are updates even within 9.1, for example, right? So 9.1 in say November is going to look a little different from 9.1 in December, although there's not major stuff does not change within what we call a minor release, right? 9 would be the major release. That .1 is the minor release. And so Red Hat, who is our upstream provider, introduces new features and new things in minor releases. So 9.2 will have some new stuff that may not be quite as compatible with all the stuff in 9.1, but you can still update to it, no problem. So hopefully that makes sense.
A lot of sense.
That's
a lot of things for me. I appreciate that, guys.
Yeah, that's how. So I think the important thing to take away from this, and part of the reason for Rocky Linux's existence, is that lots of people, and I think Red Hat perhaps underestimated how many people think that CentOS is awesome, right? They love it. And when it was announced that, oh yeah, we're going to discontinue CentOS and just go with CentOS Stream, it's very similar for sure, but it's not the same. And a lot of people, I think, really desired the same, right? And they were like, well, and plus there was the whole thing where
it's huge within the industry.
Yes, and there was the whole thing where like, well, we have we kind of cut off 8 or 9 years of updates there with the discontinuation in 2021. That was a little odd. It was like, well, maybe we started in 2019. Maybe we shouldn't have even started it if it was we're just going to cut it off in 2021. But anyway, yeah, basically lots of people came together and was like, we should do something, and we did. So with hence Rocky Linux, we try to be the spiritual successor anyway.
All right, so I'm going to dive right into the core of what we do here and maybe get it out of the way. But so I was casting about one day doing some kind of research or other, and ran across a blurb that says Rocky available for Raspberry. And so all projects get put aside. I have a regular job, and much consternation to my boss as I disappeared down the well for a couple of weeks and didn't do anything really productive for my company, but it just had to be played with.
Oh, that's nice.
Running Rocky 8 on Raspberry. I do regular DNF updates on it, but I was stunned. I was shocked. You're not the first major distro to get, let's presume, I'm going to use the word ported. I'm not a coder or a developer, sadly, but we'll call it ported for the Pi. But you are certainly, to my knowledge, the first I'm going to get in trouble here. You guys you're changing my pronunciations of things with rel. I have called it RHEL all my life, and I'm going to have a tough time changing that. So you are, to my knowledge, the first RHEL downstream or upstream distro that went on the Pi, and it just gave me a whole new world to play with, in large part for Linux Plus courses and LPIC courses that I teach. Hey, you don't have to put this in a VM anymore. You spent your $35 for your Raspberry Pi. Now you can have live. So tell us a little bit about that, if you could.
Yeah, sure. I've honestly, I think I've heard RHEL before, but I don't know. That sounds like ominous, like oh, I got to go fix RHEL again.
I use it for exactly that reason.
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay, so I come from a different tradition, I guess. But yeah. So, and honestly, that post you saw about the Raspberry Pi port, it might have been mine actually. This came from a really almost a realization and a desire to kind of scratch my own itch, quite frankly, with the as far as the Raspberry Pi goes. I also like the Raspberry Pi a lot. I've got a couple here. Well, one's downstairs, I know, and I like self-hosting a bit. I don't go crazy with it, but yeah, it acts as kind of my home server. I've got like a media server on it, and it holds my files, and I even run classic Doom. I love Doom game server. It's great.
I did a presentation on how to install and play Doom on our Pi. So
Good stuff. Yeah, I run a Zandrona multiplayer Doom server on it, and it's and I was thinking, so I had a Ubuntu server on this thing before I joined, the Rocky Linux project, and it was always my ambition, and this is actually part of why I joined, quite frankly, because it was always my ambition to upgrade and stick CentOS on it and be like, and part of it is laziness because I'm like, oh, well, CentOS 8, if I can upgrade to that on my Raspberry Pi, then I'll be set for 10 years, right?
Right.
I don't have to go and like swap all my stuff out. I'll just DNF update my way into, and it'll just run itself. And so yeah, when the CentOS discontinuation announcement kind of happened, I was like, oh no, my dreams. Like, what happened? And so after getting into Rocky Linux proper, because I do a lot of the what we call the core work, which is the bootstrapping new versions, troubleshooting packages, that kind of thing. Definitely not. Uh, I consider myself a junior member of the dev team, quite frankly, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, I noticed that there is a guy, and I wish he's part of the CentOS community, and I wish he was here, but he can't be here right now. And his name is Pablo Greco, and he's amazing guy. And what he does is one of the many things. He is an ARM enthusiast, ARM processor enthusiast. And one of the big shout out to him, by the way. He's a wonderful community member. And one of the things he does is he maintains a kernel port to the Raspberry Pi because for several technical reasons, you can't take a stock Red Hat Enterprise Linux kernel, compile it for the ARM processor, and boot the Pi with it. It doesn't work without major modifications. It has to do with firmware. There's drivers that are missing. With a lot of work, you can get it to come up, and we're still looking into this. But it will be missing like Wi-Fi, for example. You won't have that, or graphics drivers and that kind of thing. And so, yeah, Pablo, he really does, in my opinion, the heavy lifting, the core work. Because I'm no kernel developer, right? I do packaging work, but I do not consider myself. I compile kernels, sure, and I fiddle with their settings sometimes, but I do not have, in my opinion, nearly the deep knowledge to do actual kernel development. But Pablo does. He's awesome. And so um, I asked him a little bit about this and was like, oh my gosh, you have this kernel that works with Red Hat Enterprise Linux and Rocky Linux, and it just kind of works with the Pi, right? And we can develop a package for it. And if we combine this kernel and the rest of the packages, we already compile for ARM 64, like out of the box, right? We already have a Rocky Linux, Arch, we call it Arch 64, but it's ARM 64 version of everything, right? We do that by default. And I was like, so if we take your kernel and the ARM 64 packages and put them together, we can make an image. And just, and so really the only contribution that I really make is I create the images to make them easy for people to use, because Pablo's brilliant, and it was possible to take his stuff on his he has a web folder where he throws a lot of his work in, and it's a gold mine there. It's amazing, and I love him for it. And but it's not you have to figure some things out yourself. There's not really an easy, I would say, definitely doable for sure, but it's for a lot of folks that, you just want an image file that you can write to your Raspberry Pi, and it's official more or less, and it's ready to go. And so I was like, well, I can, and I did this, almost like selfish desire to, I was like, I want, Rocky Linux 8 on my Raspberry Pi so that I don't have to, switch over, and like, I don't have to upgrade Ubuntu server in like 3 years or whatever, because I don't want to. So yeah, and I got into it, and I got a little further into it than maybe I expected to at first. But I was like, really what I do is I take the work of others and I make it presentable, right? Which is, I don't want to be like, I did all this effort. It's not really, in my opinion, it's not that much effort. It's more of if you've heard of the last 10% problem, where all the work's done, but to make it, not perfect, but to make it usable for most people, there's an extra polishing going on there.
So Skip, that's kind of the role of the distribution. I mean, all of the sources that we're leveraging, I mean, the amount of new code or even edited code that a Linux distribution would implement in terms of the overall code is incredibly small. So what we're doing is we're leveraging the entire community. I mean, not just like the Linux kernel, and you start going through every single package and all of the people that have been part of each one of those packages, both the development, contributions, bug reports. There is so, I mean, the picture is so big. The Linux distribution, to Skip's point, is really, we're just there assembling that final mile so it could be consumable easily and leveraged easily. And this is one of the reasons why, honestly, I truly believe that Linux distribution should always be freely available, is because all of those upstream sources were released to the community with the intention of them being freely available. And I personally do not like stopping that or interrupting that from the end users right at that final last mile, that final stage. So to me, I do believe that the culmination of all of the work from the open source community does need to be freely available to everybody, because that was the intent, that every piece of every package involved in that distribution, that was the intent of every package in there.
Couldn't agree with you more. So, okay, let me go down two roads here. First of all, kudos and compliments to the image and the distro. Everything that I have ever done with it works perfectly. First time out. If there's a package designed to run on an x86 based flavor, there may be exceptions. I haven't done everything yet, but I have been running for a year and a half, 2 years, Cockpit on there. And that was our management console of choice when we came to teach that. And I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to do any configuration changes to make it work or any kind of recompile. It was plug and play. And now all we got to do is learn the product. And it's been that way with every project that I have ever done. I've read people who, I've got a little bug here and I got a little challenge there, but it works. So awesome. Thank you, guys. Let me move to another direction. I'm sorry, go ahead, Skip.
I said we stand on the shoulders of giants.
Exactly right.
Those giants also stand on the shoulders. It's giants all the way down. So we do a.
Okay, so an enterprise such as the ones that you guys have been participating with for so long, they're not cheap. I'm thinking, I can't take the money that I made last week and start a new distro and have it turn into Rocky. So how do you do that?
Actually, you can, you can. And here's why. Here's why. There was a number of tenets of what we created Rocky and the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation to do. It was very important to us that what happened, just to be blunt, and I don't mean anything ill out of any of this, but what happened with Centos doesn't happen again. We wanted to make sure that we're creating a structure, an organizational structure, that the organization is protected in as many ways as we possibly can. But even more than that, we have to create the technology such that somebody else can pick up from wherever we are, wherever we leave off, and go and continue this and continue running with the torch, or create another option. And so one of the first things that we identified, so let me back up a little bit. When we first started this process, Skip mentioned that we created a bunch of different channels, and he's not joking with regards to how much velocity of communication was happening on these. Just to demonstrate it, we were using a free Slack tier, right? So you get 10,000 messages in your free Slack tier. If I didn't respond to people in a couple days, messages would poof, because we had so many messages coming in. And it wasn't just that they scroll off the screen. Like, I had direct messages to me that I'm like, okay, I see that there. I'm going to get to that one later. Okay, next day goes by. And if I went like 2 or 3 days, I see that there's still a direct message from there, and I click on it and it's empty, and it says, go buy Slack to see this message. It became very clear, and we had very quickly, we had over 10,000 people joined. It was about a month and a half. So that's how quick that the community kind of took off from there. But it's been just a remarkable experience. I don't know where I was going with that, but
well, I'll bring you back around then. So you mentioned in our last end of topic, the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation, and I was kind of that would be a big help.
Thank you. I don't know. I need more coffee. I didn't sleep enough last night. Yeah. Keep me on focus, you guys. Wow. I need help. So one of the things that we identified is the thing that's most important of what we're creating is not just the operating system. It is everything we need to do to build that operating system. So we started actually not building operating system. So the primary role of what we started doing kind of collectively as a group was to start with the infrastructure. Now, Skip immediately identified, wait, before even while you're doing that, I'm going to focus on figuring out things like package build orders, dependencies, hidden dependencies, things that are not in the operating system, but are dependencies to build and to get binary compatibility. So we had to go start figuring out all of that. So Skip was working on that, but a large lion's share of the organization was working on building that build infrastructure such that we can have members of the community kind of come and be part. At least that was the goal. Now, we started off using Koji, and Koji is a fantastic build system that Fedora uses and Fedora maintains, and it is tremendous. It's awesome. But one of the things that we noticed is it's built for predominantly physical clusters. So somebody who has a physical on-prem or hosted cluster, a resource, racks of servers that they can throw builds at and manage those builds in parallel and whatnot. It's really good at that, but it's not so good at running in the cloud. And as we mentioned before, or at least in the green room, we've had so much support from cloud providers that we wanted to make sure we're leveraging these cloud providers to build the operating system, build it in a secure manner in which other people can kind of come in and join and be part of this big project. So we identified right away that we're going to need to build a build system. And so we did that. We've now released it. As a matter of fact, we didn't even want to release version 9 until we were ready to release the build system with it. So the moment somebody goes and downloads any version of Rocky, you can actually also go and get all of the infrastructure necessary to go and rebuild Rocky yourself. So to your point that you just mentioned, it's really important for the longevity of not only the project, but of enterprise Linux itself, for enterprises, IT organizations, and people, engineers, system administrators, to have so much confidence in what is enterprise Linux. We're doing these air quotes a lot today, Skip. What is enterprise Linux? And know that there's always going to be a suitable enterprise Linux solution that provides that level of compatibility, pound for pound, as Skip said, with the standard.
So RESF is a support foundation that provides resources for all of this development to happen.
So I'm going to be very pedantic here because I want to make sure that I get this correct and everybody understands very well. So when I posted that message to the blog, I was actually talking about CIQ. So I was thinking CIQ is going to come and go build this, and we're going to go, make this a project with the community. When I saw 10,000 people joining that community, it was clear this is not going to be a CIQ effort. It can't be a CIQ effort. This has to be a community effort. And we have to do the community in such a way that we're going to protect the project first and foremost, and then create a foundation that not only kind of supports the notion and ethics and morals of what it means to be open source, but at the same, because there's already foundations that do that, but there aren't foundations that really also cater simultaneously to the focus of where we need it, the users. And in our case, the users are predominantly professional system administrators, IT organizations, large enterprise organizations, and that is our community. And that is where we need to be really thinking about and making sure that, yes, we're abiding to the morals and standards of what it means to be open source, but we're also providing something that really cross-pollinates the needs and the necessity of what enterprise organizations require. And that was kind of the guiding light of what was RESF to be and how are we going to get there. So RESF stands for the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation. It is a public benefits corporation, and it is a separate entity, and it runs itself. It is managed by the community, and it is a standalone entity. Now, CIQ, just to kind of paint this picture, being a for-profit company, does not control and does not hold hostage or even own anything about RESF. Aside from the fact that CIQ contributes literally now millions of dollars to the RESF to help enable this and help enable what we're building and what we're doing, aside from that, there's no sort of control structure. As a matter of fact, we've built in control structures to the RESF to ensure that companies, including CIQ, cannot hold the project hostage in a negative way. So from a business perspective, that means CIQ has to add value, true value, not by, again, holding it hostage and saying, if you need this, if you want this, you have to pay us. No, we're never going to do that. We can't do that. Instead, we're here to add that value, and it forces an ethical business model as well. So that's kind of, sorry, I don't know what that sound was. That's kind of where we came to be with regards to the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation. So it is its standalone entity, and that's why lots of individuals as well as organizations have supported this. And if you look at our sponsors and you look at the companies that are part of what it is that we're doing, you're going to see a very impressive lineup of organizations.
And you've got some, RESF has some exciting news underway right now, yeah?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So we have just gotten, well, within the last couple months, we've gotten all of our new bylaws written, our new charter. We've had it validated by various open source experts, legals. Heather Meeker, if anyone knows of Heather Meeker, she's now validated it, looked over it, and contributed to it. And again, what we've created is this foundation, excuse me, that caters kind of to not only open source, but also our user base, which is enterprise and professional IT organizations and people. So all of those bylaws are now done. We're right now we are right now in the process of a vote on board members. So right now, Skip nor I know who's going to be on the board starting in Jan 1, but we have voted and we're waiting for all those votes to come in, and we are anticipating by mid next week we will know who's going to be on the board, and we're going to be having a press release shortly there afterwards. And the board is comprised of individual members of the foundation, so contributors like Skip and myself and others, as well as several independent at-large directors. So these are people that are not associated with the project, but do bring value into the project, either as users or contributors or open source people and other project leads. And so all of that's coming together right now. And the one thing I really want to stress as we're talking about board members is, even though we have sponsors to the RESF, we will never sell board seats. In my mind, this is a surefire way for organizations to kind of come in and start manipulating the agenda of what an open source foundation is doing. So we never sell board seats. And that's a very important and critical distinction in our mind.
Yeah, we've certainly seen holy wars on either side of that coin. So kudos to you. Hey, right after you posted in the chat feed, somebody posted a question. I'm not sure who's going to best answer this, so we'll just throw it out. Tullowit, who's a regular here, and he is a moderator on the unofficial Discord channel that kind of supports our efforts here. He wants to know, what does it take to go from let's add this feature to Rocky Linux to making it part of the distro? So if somebody's looking at the stream release perhaps, or you're looking at the most recent binaries that are final with the rel. Gee, I can do that. And so there's a new feature that somebody looked at and says, we really ought to incorporate this. How long from that germ of an idea to delivery? And I'm sure it's not an answer.
I'll take the first stab, and then Skip already talked a little bit about SIG, so I want Skip to come in as well. We've had a lot of requests for the upstream kernel as a alternative kernel to Rocky Linux. And this has been a lot of requests, like not a few. I mean, this is a lot of organizations. Usually it's the larger organizations that are either interested in the security model of the upstream kernel or some of the performance benefits of the upstream kernel. And so
Rocky and Rocky Stream, huh?
I don't know if I'd call it stream, but yeah. But the way that these come to be is through the special interest groups that Skip mentioned earlier. So if somebody has an idea, they have another package they want to include, they have another optimizations or changes. I'll put out a little poke. If somebody wanted to have a System 5 enabled operating system, because that one comes up a number of times, it makes me nervous too, Skip. But with that said, yeah, I'm still a System 5 init person, so yeah, I still go back to that. But if somebody wanted to do that, they could. They would have to create a special interest group. They'd have to design a charter for that special interest group and set up the appropriate leadership structure with that special interest group. If you just have a package, a single package that you want to bring in, and a special interest group does not currently exist that would fit for that package, then we would talk about creating a special interest group that would be best for that package. But generally speaking, the intention here and the build system that we created called Peridot, Mustafa, if you see him in our Mattermost, which by the way, we moved from Slack to Mattermost because of the problem that we mentioned regarding message retention, among other things. So we moved to Mattermost. If you do see Mustafa and Skip, as well as Neil, Lewis, and others on the team, they're very familiar with the build system. So if you do have any questions on that, please do feel free to ask. And that's a little teaser on joining our, getting everybody to join our Mattermost. But with all that being said, the build system is designed to support special interest groups and additional packages. So if you come into the Mattermost, you come into our chat or IRC, and you want to start maintaining something special, some addition to the operating system, We can do that through the special interest groups initiatives that we and structure that we already have, and that's how we would do that. Skip, is there anything that you wanted to add on a technical side or other?
Yes, just not so much technical, but it's an amazing question, and we actually get it a lot. And I think one of the I always say this in our release meetings, but build it and they will come, right? So I'll give you a good example is how the Raspberry Pi image got started. We had we had a chat channel in our, and by the way, Greg talked about Mattermost. I would say chat.rockylinux.org and we have bridged IRC channels with it for folks who like IRC, is the nerve center of Rocky Linux development and conversation and everything.
And
right?
I just posted the link to Rocky website, and it's in the tabs right on, I think, not in about, but under support, I think. So,
and we have, all kinds of folks there for all kinds of reasons. And, lots of troubleshooting happens there, lots of development discussion, just everything people are interested in. And it's organized into separate channels and so forth. But yeah, so we had we currently have an alt arch channel, alternative architecture, right? Which the Raspberry Pi kind of qualifies because it's not supported by stock Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And so I mentioned before I was doing this work, but I didn't really have, I was chatting up with, folks on the chat channel and asking for ideas, advice, when I'm trying to solve a problem or something. But the original, I'd recommend doing iterative development, right? So, try something, right? And you can compile things yourself, no problem, right? Do it yourself. I'm all about do it yourself. And so, and with help and advice from other people, obviously you want to collaborate and get something going, and have a prototype or something to show off and be like, hey, look, we would love, here's the RPM that we want to include in a special SIG repository or something, right? We want to develop it further, and then we can, like the Raspberry Pi image started out on my home server, right? And then was distributed to friends for testing, and they were like, "This is awesome. Let's publish it." And then eventually, we work our way up to the and now it's on the, if you go to the downloads page and there's an alternative images section, and you can pull it right there. And so it's really, I'd encourage not taking the cart before the horse, right? Don't set up this entire giant thing where you're going to have all this stuff going. Take it, let's go product, and then we'll go formalize it more, right? So I don't know if that's business speak, but yeah, it's they call that product driven development. I don't even know, but yeah. So
it looks like that answers another question that came up, but I guess there's a half question here we can still hit. Andre posted at 2 minutes after the hour. How do you decide what to add and what to skip? So when does an idea come out where everybody says, no, not that?
So really, I mean, I'm going to give you some more examples here. So first of all, I put a little blurb in there about it, but so core Rocky Linux, forgetting the SIGs for a moment, the special interest groups, core Rocky Linux, it's actually very easy to decide what to add and what not to. What is Red Hat Enterprise Linux doing? That's our whole mission of core Rocky Linux, is to match it, again, pound for pound, version for version, everything, right? Now, and so if someone, wants to create another, a newer version of a package, right? Like maybe, I think something that came up the other day, actually, is someone said, hey, I don't like the version of USB guard that's included in Rocky Linux. And unfortunately, our answer to that is, well, we cannot put the new version of USB guard into Rocky Linux because our goal is to match Red Hat Enterprise Linux. However, if you would like to, you can totally grab the upstream source from Fedora, compile it against Rocky Linux 9. And if there might be some work involved. I'm sorry to say, like there's effort involved in everything, right? But yeah, and you can get it working. And if you get it working for yourself, you can share it with people. And if people are interested, we'll host it for you. Absolutely, we'll put it up on our Git, right? And we'll and then we'll even put it, we'll make it available in a repository space for you. It won't be the primary Rocky Linux repository. People will have to enable it, right? Like we'll have to. It's an add-on, right? But absolutely, yeah, we'll no problem. Like and there's steps towards doing that, and there's a lot of information in the wiki about if you want to found a SIG. We also tell a lot of folks that if you want a one-off package like that, it's Rocky Linux might be appropriate, but also there are amazing third-party repositories for Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and one of the most popular is called EPEL. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's extra packages
for comments about EPEL, so surely.
Yep, extra packages for Enterprise Linux. And if you're, a lot of times, especially if you just want a slightly newer version of something, or if you want this one package and not, it's not a big thing like the Raspberry Pi support, it's just a single, thing, then it might be appropriate for you to head over to Fedora and check out EPEL and see if you can get hosted, or if you can become an EPEL maintainer there. Highly recommend checking out, and they're not really upstream from us, I suppose, but they're definitely a great community there that maintains a lot of stuff. And yeah, it's so it depends. And we have conversations about where stuff fits, right? It depends on what the there's a million situations, and there's a different answer for each situation. But yeah,
we've got a really wide variety of audience, and most of them aren't here live. So we got a pretty good turnout for our usual, but by the end of the week, our viewership will go up 50, 60 times of what the live show is. A number of them are interested in pursuing development careers, though they're not always sure what that means. I've got a degree in test or something like that, so I can code. Now, what do I do with that? So here's one of the things you can do. Take those skills and find a project that you like, find an application that you want to help develop, find some flavor of Linux that you like, do some bug research, maybe do some app development, whatever you've got. And so here's a wonderful opportunity. And that's what I wanted to cover into this. I sidetracked quickly and easily, but there was definitely something I wanted to mention. When I was asking Greg about some earlier projects, particularly Chaos, I went back and looked at a lot of the old boards and discussions and things like that. And one of the things that stood out the most is how friendly everything that you've done is to all levels of contributors, from the most base newbie who only wants to contribute by saying, I really like this, or I'd like to try this and I'll let you know what I think, all the way to a Skip or a Pablo level contributor or a Rocky level developer. So kudos to you on all of those accounts.
It's, the culture of the open source project is really important. I've learned a lot, and I obviously continue to learn a lot on how best to maintain that. And sometimes, it's easy to get into arguments and whatnot, and we try not to. We've had a couple of reminders of how important it is to make sure that we're always staying on a positive vibe and a positive note. And again, yeah, there have been mistakes along the way, but mostly everyone on the team has learned from every one of those mistakes, including myself. And yeah, our goal is to just do better all the time, just to do better. Skip brought up EPEL. If you don't mind, I'm going to share, I hope I'm not pivoting the conversation, but these are our update metrics, and it provides a really cool glimpse into what's happening with regards to all of the different enterprise Linux variants. And this is data taken out of EPEL, based on what is shared publicly with the world. So as people connect in, obviously there's logs, they anonymize those logs and then publish a derivative of those logs so people can run metrics like this. This is about when the end of life announcement of Centos hit, right at the beginning of this graph. You can see it took us a little while to go and build build Rocky Linux and then to release something. It took us almost 7 months to get that out there. It was about 4 months building the infrastructure, or predominantly focused on building the infrastructure. And then about 2 months taking the work of Skip and others and then throwing into that infrastructure and then ending up with an operating system and about another month of testing. And then that's how we come to the 7 months. And you can see from right there, we started increasing, and you can see kind of where we've been going and what the trend line looks like. It's definitely the steepest acceleration out of all of the enterprise Linux focused operating systems. And this particular chart is looking at something called, well, it's non-ephemeral. And usually I start with ephemeral, but this is the non-ephemeral. And ephemeral is short-lived systems that have just been provisioned and running for less than a week. And so we end up seeing kind of a lot of CI/CD pipelines, a lot of microservices, DevOps stuff, testing stuff, and whatnot ends up ephemeral. But more of the persistent systems is what this graph is showing. And you can definitely see a really kind of cool curve here. And you've seen a couple times where, Red Hat, Centos, and us have kind of just, traded back and forth a little bit in terms of leading. And it's been a fun race to watch. But you can see the incline of this. If we look now at the ephemeral systems, we see a really different story. And it's a really interesting one as well. So this is what you see when you look at the ephemeral systems. Now, it's much more jagged. There's a lot of potential reasons for that. We don't have the specific answers on who is connecting, how are they connecting, and whatnot. But you can see it is in fact very jaggy. But you can see it's almost like we've replaced kind of the CI/CD usage of what Red Hat was, and we're kind of taking over a lot more of that now. And you can also see in both of these kind of the effect on Red Hat by end-of-lifing CentOS in terms of the increase of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So a lot of people, ask, why did Red Hat do that? Of course, we don't have the answer. We don't really know, but this graph tells a very interesting story. And I'm sure that Red Hat, at least I would guess that Red Hat was expecting some of that to occur in terms of uptake. So they were very successful, I would think, in terms of that goal, if that was in fact their goal. But yeah, what I love here is just the amount of uptake that we've had and continue to have. Certain analysts that we've spoken with have shared that they fully expect this to continue. And they're very much looking forward to, what next year and the following year are going to look like with regards to Rocky uptake.
Well, all right, so I want to work with this chart for 1 second.
Oh, sorry, I can go back to it.
Yeah, just for a quickie. So there was some news that surprised me on December 7th. There was a news release out of Fermi Labs and out of CERN. You're no doubt familiar.
Oh, yeah.
So for everybody else, this lovely blue line down here is Alma Linux. They started developing around the same time that Rocky started developing. And where do you fit them? Are they downstream? Are they upstream? Or did they replace CentOS? How do we characterize them?
They are basically solving the same area that we are focused on solving as well. They came out and announced that they were going to do something, I think a week after we did. I've talked with the founder. One of the reasons that he mentioned was he was trying to get a hold of me, but honestly, it was very difficult at that time to get a hold of me. And because he couldn't get a hold of me, he decided to just go ahead and create their own. And they did so, and they announced it way back over here. And you can see they were out to market much sooner. It's kind of hard to see when this line starts taking off right there, but it was quite a bit sooner than we were. And they've done, a lot of work to really get that out soon, and they continue to be, to give them a huge amount of credit. They're very fast in terms of releasing new versions, so point releases and major versions. We tend to hold back a little bit, and it's nothing negative to what they're doing or their process. but we really want to make sure that we're going through all of the appropriate testing and making sure that everything is completely reproducible before we release. I would assume that they're doing similar, but I don't have transparency into that, and I would expect that they're doing great.
So of course the news, which surprised me, just because I'm probably a bigger Rocky fan than I am Alma by far and away, is that both CERN and Fermi Labs announced that going forward, for the most part, and not 100%, their Linux distro of choice is going to be Alma. And so I wonder, did they come to you and say, hey, if you give us this much more support, or if you do, then we will select you? Or is that just something that they did on their own? Do you?
I'm not privy to what. So I'm not privy to why CERN made the but I do have some I have gotten some feedback from the Fermi Lab side. From the CERN side, it seems as though, they made some judgment calls that, for whatever reasons, they ended up choosing that. I don't have specifics into that, but I have a feeling based on feedback that I heard, we did not release version 8 for PPC 64 for power. We did not release that for version 8. We wanted to make sure that we are getting the big kind of mass amount of the community released first, which was x86 and ARM. And so we really focused on x86 and ARM. And you can see even with that, it took us a significant amount of time to get that released. We didn't want to delay any further and really make sure, try to get PPC out there as well. So we didn't do PPC. One of the bits of feedback that I've gotten was CERN does have some PPC use cases. And as a result, that influenced their decision. Moving forward to version 9, we have not only PPC, but we've got S390 as well as x86, as you can imagine, and ARM. And we are working with a few people on RISC. And so we're hoping to get a RISC build done at some point. Now, it would be a very different type of build than what we're currently doing. So it would be an alternative build because that is not supported upstream. So we would be kind of patching and making modifications and kind of forking to do that. And we will, of course, offer all of our changes and whatnot back upstream if any of that is interesting to upstream. But for the most part, yeah. So we're not sure exactly what the cause was for CERN to make that decision. But Fermi, who is basically, Fermi does a lot of amazing research, but they work extremely closely with CERN. And they're kind of, a major point of presence for a lot of the CERN computation and research that's happening here in the United States. And as a result of that, they just followed CERN's decision point on that. So that was the feedback that I got back from Fermi. But in either case, this is one of the benefits of having, even multiple solutions within the enterprise Linux family of distributions. Is if anything ever happens to Alma, if anything ever happens to any of the distributions, not to pick on Alma, but if anything happens to any of them, there is now choice. And this is part of why we want to make Rocky reproducible, is because we want to make sure that everybody who chooses to go with enterprise Linux knows that they have the confidence that this is stable, not just because one organization is stable, but because many organizations are doing the exact same thing. And it is a very minor lift going from one to the other. One other point I'll just make on this real quick, and then I'll stop blabbing, at least about this, is another aspect that Peridot kind of changes is an area of focus that we've had really since day one. I spent a lot of my career working for the Department of Energy, working for US Federal. I know many of the aspects of what they need and what they're looking for. Couple that with presidential mandate on supply chain security within the federal government and validation of supply chain security. We've spent and are continuing until we release this, we're putting together a huge amount of transparency. So if somebody has a Rocky Linux system that they've built, right, they can go and validate a binary and say that binary came from that RPM. And that RPM, the checksums all match. So I have confidence in that binary because it came from that RPM. And that RPM is signed by the organization who distributed it. So I have confidence in that RPM. But do you have confidence as we continue walking up the chain, right? Do you have confidence with the organization who built it? And how do you know that you have confidence with them? This goes right into absolute, supply chain transparency and security. So Peridot is adding additional functionality around not just SBOM logs and everything else that you need to get that supply chain security, but also cryptographic validation and signing of each one of those artifacts. So you can go back and you can validate this binary came from this package, which came from this organization, which came from this build infrastructure, which came from this SBOM. And here's the entire build log of that. And if somebody really wants, they can go back and follow that entire path all the way back up. And that's something that is incredibly important to us. And then couple in additional security accreditations that we're doing. So as an example of this, and I can probably turn this image off so you can see everybody. As an example of that, I mentioned kind of how CIQ is putting capital and putting resources back into the Rocky community. We are funding a FIPS validation of Rocky. Anyone familiar with FIPS knows that it is not only a very long and drawn out process, but it is also a very expensive process. So it's approximately $200,000 for each cryptographic module that you wish to validate. And in the operating system, there's 5 major cryptographic subsystems that need validation. So this is $1 million investment. And we are not only doing the FIPS validation for business reasons, but we're actually open sourcing all of that. So once it's done, we're giving that entire validation away to the community, including those binaries that have been validated to the community for free, and anybody can leverage that FIPS validation. So this is a really important step, and it's a huge, CIQ is now, we're just past 70 people. So we've grown, we're getting to the point where we're no longer a small company, which is kind of funny for me, because I've been a CEO of a small company for a while now. And so we're getting to the point where we're now no longer a small company, but it's still $1 million is still a huge investment. And that's just for version 8. For version 9 is another $1 million investment. And we're already starting to prepare for that now. So you can expect, 8.6 is going to have a FIPS validation on it, and 9.2 is going to have a FIPS validation on it. And all of that is going to be freely available again.
That's amazing. Okay, I'm chewing up a tremendous amount of your time here. You've answered all my questions and then some, even the ones I haven't asked, you've taken care of. I got 2 quickies just to close out my list, and then anything else you guys want to talk about, or if you've had enough of me, take off and enjoy the rest of the day. Okay, you are big FOSS proponents, as am I. I don't donate to a lot of organizations. Some I've picked up recently, and my longest term one is Linux Foundation. To my mind, the largest FOSS supporter organization out there. Do you work with them? Do you benefit from them? Where does that fit?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Because it's my own personal love.
Yeah, so I can say this, and I'll stop after that.
Okay,
we have a very good relationship with the Linux Foundation, not only the foundation itself, but members of the foundation. So I can give an example. Greg Crowe-Hartman, who is the maintainer of the stable kernel. So when I was talking about bringing in the stable kernel support for Rocky as an alternative kernel, we are working with Greg directly on that kernel. And Greg has been just fantastic. I can also mention that he has been nominated as one of the independent at-large board members for the RESF. So hopefully we'll have some good news with regards to everybody who's been nominated, who actually got voted in. but he is definitely on the ballot, and we are very excited and happy to be able to work with Greg on things like this. But again, the Linux Foundation has been just fantastic and tremendous, not only in terms of our partnership with them as a foundation partnership, but also just in terms of what they've done for the community. It's massive, and we're very appreciative to everything that the Linux Foundation has done. So I'm glad to hear that you are a donator to the LF.
There's not much money in these pockets, but you got to pick some, and that and EFF I love, and a couple specific applications out there. All right, last one. This one is all for Dave. So what I do for a living, purportedly, is I teach. So I'm with an organization where we write books and make videos, and our primary stand-up customer base are federal law enforcement agencies. So we teach them what's a computer, what's in it, and enough background that they can address technology forensically. And so when they're on the stand, they've achieved some level of certification, typically using our materials or our stand-up instruction. What do you got in the world of education? What does CIQ have in the world of an educational program?
Oh my goodness, that's another fantastic. It's a fantastic question. So and you mentioned LPI earlier. I have a weak spot for LPI. I mentioned I work for the Department of Energy. Before I worked for the Department of Energy, I worked for a little company called Linux Care. I don't know if you remember Linux Care back from the late 90s, early 2000s. That was one of the most fun companies that I ever worked with, because I got to work with, I mean, just legends and just so many tremendous, amazing people in open source. People that, I mean, you just, the moment they start talking, everyone shuts up and just listens, because the amount of stuff that's just amazing that they can share. So I'm not going to start name dropping everybody, but there's a lot of amazing people that came out of Linux Care. And so I got to work there for a little while. It was fantastic. But the reason why I bring that up, because when I was there, the Linux Care had a fantastic role in some of these early kind of Linux education programs. And I believe Linux Care even wrote the first check of sponsorship to the LPI. So way back then. So I was consulted on a little bit, on some of the early LPI documents. The same thing on the LSB side. They were they were a huge initial supporter of LSB. I helped out a little bit with the Linux file system hierarchy standard. And so stuff like that. So I have a weak spot for all of that. So now to get to your question, which by the way, I'm going to name drop actually one or two things. Since you remember Linux Care. Linux Care had 3 founders. Do you remember the 3 founders?
No.
Dave Sifry, Arthur Tide was the CEO, and
Okay.
Dave LeDuc was the CMO. Arthur and Dave are currently with us at CIQ now.
Wow. Oh, that's wonderful.
It is tremendous. Getting the gang back together. So yeah, it's just been, CIQ has been a lot of fun as well. But to get to your question, the LPI has just done so much amazing stuff for the community, both in terms of the curriculums that they've created and the materials that they've created and whatnot. We have had some conversations already with the LPI in terms of helping and sponsoring there and being part of what the LPI is doing. And I'm hoping we've had some really good success there. And we're just going to continue pushing on that and helping everywhere we can within the open source community. And LPI is a big one there.
Outstanding. All right. So the last completely pointless, unrelated question to anything at all. You gotta love living in the internet age because of what we've just done here. You and I ran across each other. I ran across you in some thread on a Reddit subreddit somewhere. And I was talking to one person from Alma and said, hey, would you consider talking with us and that fell apart for very good reasons. But you were also in on that thread, and oh, wait a minute, this is a way better thing. So, okay, let's reach out to you with this marvelously semi-anonymous messaging system that's part of Reddit. Said, hey, I got this show. Would you consider joining? Absolutely. Here's the name of my administrator to handle these things. Send her an email. So I send Jessica an email, and you guys all work together. I don't know Jessica. I don't know where she is. I don't know you guys. I don't know where you are. She doesn't know who I am. She doesn't know where I'm at. But after a string of emails and a Euro link, this is the internet age. I still don't know where you are. So where are you guys?
Skip, you start.
I am, we talk about how we're downstream from Red Hat. I'm a little upstream from Red Hat. I am in just north of Raleigh, North Carolina. So the downtown Raleigh is about a 25-minute drive from my house.
Yes, from your job history, Carolina.
Yes. Yeah, you can
look up that I
go
done.
NC State. Yeah, go Wolfpack. But
Okay.
you can figure me out.
I was going with your work as a Linux admin for the court system. And
You can
say,
kind of tell. Yep. But they come and pluck engineers like apples down here, and they're like, oh, you can just join our company. Thank you for graduating.
And Greg?
So I spent most of my life in the Bay Area, and CIQ even started off being a Silicon Valley kind of startup. Even though pretty much everyone in the company is remote, it was, I kind of based it off of that, and I've more recently, kind of in the middle of COVID, I moved to Reno, so I am now in Nevada. Yeah, so trying to get away. We're having some beautiful weather here, and I love snow, and I love actually having seasons. California is one season, which is just always nice. But I do like all of the different forms of weather and whatnot. And it's kind of fun not to have earthquakes, not to have to think about
it. Not that far a drive from the Bay Area, so you still get to go catch up with the old folks.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons where it was like, we're close enough that it's what, a few hours away, and so I do go back to the Bay quite often due to meetings and whatnot, and it is still it's such a common meetup for and location for so many people in our industry, so it makes sense. So I do go back and forth at a reasonable amount, but yeah, I spend most of my time here in Nevada.
Good. Well, is there anything that you guys would like to talk about or promote or anything like that?
Well, Dave, you got to tell us where you are now.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, but my regulars know I'm in a northern suburb of Houston, Texas, little tiny community called Spring. We went remote, my company, right around the beginning of the COVID lockdowns, February of 20. Yeah, that sounds about right. And while we do have some in-office activities still happen and everybody tries to turn up once every week or two, by and large, we've become one of those mostly remote companies.
Yeah.
Go in for the occasional meeting, and our offices, I think today exist for the physical video production that we do. We've got production facilities down there, and we do classes. We were hiring SMEs, and I guess we still are, and that's either bring them in for a week or two and have them shoot, or we've done some online over Zoom and similar sessions and turn those into. So we're like so many companies now. I've got some very good friends that I've developed in the last couple of years over at Canonical, and same thing, 5,000, 10,000 people and about 6 people in an office behind a 7-Eleven somewhere. So very cool. Well, you guys, your background is amazing on both of you guys, your current skills, your current projects and activities. What a pleasure it was having, and I'm not throwing you out. If you got more you want to add, by all means, but you gave us way more time than I had possibly hoped for. And I know.
Be careful, we'll talk your ear off if you let us.
Oh, hey, great. Everything at Rocky stops when you two guys get together and do something like this. It's watching the show and there's no development happening and there's no negotiations.
It's been quite a journey, honestly. Like I knew when I got into this, I was like, oh yeah, I know some I've done a little bit of packaging work. I know how to. I was like,
Nowhere
I
near.
had not seen nothing. Like, I think I'm gonna tell one quick story, one quick anecdote with my previous job is I think my boss and not Greg now, but this is in before I worked at CIQ. It was shortly after Rocky Linux had got started. We were still bootstrapping the whole thing. We had nothing out there. I had mentioned to my job that I was working on this in my spare time for NDA reasons and that kind of thing. They were like, yeah, sure, what Linux geek, whatever, do what you want. But they my boss was. It should be noted too that like in my previous job, I wasn't the only Linux guy, but I was, as far as infrastructure goes, I was pretty much the guy. And I know there's admins out there that have been there as well. And so but I just started working on this Rocky Linux thing for a few months, and it was with these amazing people, with over chat and seeing them, nights and weekends, and we were trying to bootstrap this thing. And my boss comes around the corner and he's talking to I think my boss's boss or someone superior. He's like, oh, and here's Skip, and he's one of our, he knows everything there is to know about Linux. And I was like, oh, honey, oh, you have no, no, I don't. like you don't know. Like these people I work with on the weekends. Oh my God, they will.
Skip, did you owe honey your boss?
I did in my mind. I didn't know honey.
Oh, okay.
But in my mind, I was like, "Oh, baby, you have no idea." I said something to that effect to him. I was like, I think his name was Chris, and I was like, "Chris, you don't know, man. You're like, I am nothing compared to this group I work with." And they're all just coordinated over the internet, and they're all brilliant. Like,
I'm looking at you, and what I tell you are among the giants on whose shoulders more do stand, and I stand on giant shoulders to boot. Ditto for Greg. What an industry giant, a technical giant. Visionary is not an unfair term by any stretch. So, wow.
Skip is being really modest. And while we love the modesty, it is, yeah, he's also very accurate. And I want to describe this a little bit. We had 10,000 people show up, like 0 to 10,000, like faster than I've ever seen anywhere in any open source project that has ever existed in my multiple decades of experience in open source. Never seen anything like that before. I was just lucky to be part of it. And the amount of capability on the team, I mean, you can imagine 10,000 people all volunteering to say we can help. We split things into channels. We had teams kind of like organically start developing. It became a meritocracy across the board, like a near perfect meritocracy, if not a perfect one, in the sense that I didn't know Skip before. I had no idea, anybody on the team. Everybody was just, everybody was just like, here we are, let's go to work. And there was almost no way to organize it. There was almost no way to manage it. I mean, how do you manage it if you don't even have a management team, right? One person, me, I cannot manage 10,000 people. So I was completely overwhelmed, and just, we had the good fortune to, I don't remember who said this, but it was, let's start breaking apart all of the different areas, the functional units of what it is that we're creating and what it is that we're doing. And within those were kind of small enough focused groups that certain people were now able to kind of, people started working on things, and a natural organic leadership started to form. And again, I didn't know Skip. I think Skip, your name, I think it was Skip in Slack, but I don't remember. So many people used aliases. Many people didn't post pictures. Most people didn't post pictures. So, or they used, cartoon characters or something else and whatnot. We had no idea who anybody was. And all of a sudden, we now have an organizational structure, and we have a leadership structure starting to emerge, and we have things getting done. And now the organization at that point was very manageable. So we had 10,000 people show up, but we can't have 10,000 people all contributing. So that did filter down. And, the team that we got is so ridiculously amazing. The amount of intelligence, capability, and just humanity that is within the Rocky group is so tremendous. I couldn't have even wished for a better group if I could have handpicked. It is fantastic. And that is why from a CIQ perspective, I've tried to hire as many people in the teams that I can, because at this point, I mean, everybody that's associated with Rocky is just so dang good, just to put it bluntly, and just really good people. I've seen people come in from the community, into our Mattermost or into IRC, everything from trolls to newbies, to people that have never installed Linux but want to get involved, to even non-technical contributors, people that have never contributed to Linux or open source before, but they're like, hey, I do this really good. Is this of use? And it's like, yeah, it totally is. Let's figure out how you can join and how we can all work together. And again, it is all 100% community, from the infrastructure going through the operating system, through the entire stack. It is all community, and the community owns it. The community controls it. And it's just been amazing to be part of this and to witness it. So I really just wanted to give a big, huge kudos to every member of the team. We have some of the brightest and smartest technical people out there in the Linux distribution space. And we also have, many of the best people that I've ever worked with there. So between that and CIQ, honestly, I'm so happy and so excited over everything that's happening. It's just fantastic. So anyway, I'm done raving and whatnot.
Well, I know they're looking at you saying you are not allowed to retire for at least the next 20 years now. You've got the energy, you've got the vision, you brought them together. The competence, it's so clear from the timeline. You got 4 months of infrastructure development, and then 3 months later, you got a product release that's strong. So kudos to
that. Yeah, it was really, I was amazed myself, honestly, even part of it. I was like, oh, wow, we did all that. Okay. Yeah. And I was thinking about what Greg just said. Yeah, I consider us amazingly lucky, but at the same time, we had 10,000 shots, right? We weren't that lucky, right? 10,000 tries.
Well, for everybody else, one other fun thing for you guys, besides help them out, okay? Contribute. If you contribute a couple of bucks, if you can contribute some expertise, if you've got some skill, Rocky is a great place to use it. Check out their site, rockylinux.org. They got a store, and I never paid attention to it until today. I got Christmas shopping to do before the weekend's out. There's going to be some Rocky stuff. There we go. There's the cups and the backpacks and the whole ball of wax. So yeah, hit the store, help them out, guys, and go Rocky. And I need beauty shots of Rocky doing cool things on Raspberries. That's my shirt, and that'll be my hat.
So Dave, I want to just send out a special thank you to you as well. So Skip and I can tell, with Skip, I know Skip pretty well. We had so I'm going to speak for him. We had a really good time. This was a lot of fun. And, please, if you ever want us on again, just say the word. We would love, and I'd love to also bring in some of the other members of the Rocky team as well. Maybe at some point we just have a huge party.
Sounds good. I won't burden you too much, but count on it next year. We're going to kill this show in 2 weeks. Drama, Dave Rush, Ask Me Anything, goes away because it existed to serve a niche that doesn't exist anymore. And that was people studying for CompTIA certifications during lockdown. Lockdown is gone. We're back to normal procedures. But I've got a blessing from the company to start a new operation that's going to be Pi and Linux focused. It's not going to be CompTIA study focused. So you guys will fit better into the new module, whatever we're going to call it. I think we're going to call it Andromeda. we've got drama right now. Dave Rush asked me anything, so we're gonna surround it and make it and drama, DUH somewhere. I don't know, something funky like that. These, like, as you've experienced, naming things has to be organic and it's got to be a lot of fun, but that's where I'm poking at. Hey guys.
Last thing real quick.
Yeah, please.
Everybody watching the show, please, you know, we have a lot of fun hanging out in Mattermost and being part of the community. If you're on IRC, just head over to the Rocky Linux channels. If you're not an IRC or you want something that's a little bit more Slack-like, we use Mattermost. If you just go to chat.rockylinux.org, chat.rockylinux.org, you're going to find our chat system over there. It's running Mattermost. There's local clients, there's phone clients, and there's a web client as well. So we'd love to have you join and just be part of what it is that we're doing. And yeah, and help other people there, be part of the community. We would love that. So please join, please be part of everything that we're working on.
And don't leave now, because what I have, I completely ignore the chat. I get enraptured by what you were saying. And so lots of good stuff here. Will Shaw's sold on Rocky as his next distro. I've been pushing him on that for a long time. Xerxes is here. I need another machine to run it. What else? I saw a couple of good ones roll by. I can't imagine building an OS, though, getting overwhelmed. Boy, you're exactly right, Xerxes. I see this on the Raspberry Pi forums all the time. I'm a beginning coder. I bought a Raspberry Pi. I want to write an operating system for it. Nobody writes an operating system anymore. You do what you guys do. You take pieces and improve them and fix them and port them and do whatever. But they're always gung-ho in the beginning until they realize what's really involved.
It's a lot. By the way, Dave, while you're looking that up, you mentioned our merchandise store. We're going to send you, I'm going to have Jessica reach out. We're going to send you some shirts, some hats and whatnot. So please wear it on the show. And if you want, give some away. We'll give you a bunch.
Absolutely do that. I always think about putting the bite on a guest and saying, hey, you know, we got a giveaway contest here. What do you got? But I just didn't want to do that with you guys. It was a time issue and lots of others. Oh, Jason, you're 2 hours from Skip's house. You guys need to get together. Jason Helms is one of our strong regulars and one of the mods of the unofficial Total Seminars Discord channel. There's a whole bunch of the mods here. There's Asheville down the road. I didn't realize that, Betlin, that you were from there. Andre is from the Netherlands, though he thinks for some reason that he's from Portugal, but he's not that close. Okay, so, okay, Skip is responding in here. Some there. You went to high school in Asheville. Very cool. And Will likes to, okay. Will is a Delta Airlines captain. So he gets everywhere and visits everybody. I'm going to visit with him in 2 weeks when he gets into Houston next time. Pelowit is in fact on a small island in the Pacific. He's in Hawaii, paradise. I don't know how we go dragging down these things. There's always something that somebody can contribute, some little piece of conversation that gets everybody's triggers tripped. What do you got here? Skip's talking to Linux Fest. Okay. Oh yeah. So hey, while I'm looking at here, where's the next conference or two that we're going to see you guys at?
Oh, that's a great question. I wish I can even just answer it. I don't know. I don't know what's even coming up next. We have this huge list of all of the conferences that are going to be that we're planning on going on in 23. And yeah, I'm at a loss.
Yeah, get that website. That's something that I ran across here recently. Lots of people want to know where my boss is day to day. He's a big personality in the industry. Mike Myers writes all of the top books in our niche, and people call it, where are you going to be next weekend? Where are you going to be? And it's the same thing. I don't know. My administrative assistant knows that. They tell me the day they hand me my plane tickets. And so I'm hard within our organization to get a tab on the websites that says, well, here's where you'll find Mike, and maybe the same thing for the nice folks at Rocky. Here's where we're going to be. Bentley,
okay, the kind of thing we should put on our website.
Just,
Maybe we should. Might be a good idea.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Skip.
I'm a contributor. Yes, Alex would have loved this show. She's our
section.
From up in what's the Milan. She's up in Milan and a big Linux head and a ninja.
Dave,
Okay.
Dave Leduc
Or-
mentioned that we're going to be at scale 20x.
Okay, scale 20x. And join our holy war. Pineapple on pizza or not?
Absolutely not. Easy question. No. Okay.
I'm good with it, and I've actually sometimes I'm actually in the mood for it because
Abomination
it's a lighter pizza. Now, granted, I'm not like committed to it, like I can do any kind of pizza. But yeah. So but you know, here's another one that I usually ask because it tells me a lot about people. Pirates or ninjas?
Pirates.
Pirates. I'm too out of shape to be a ninja.
All right, we got the pirate crew here.
Okay. And pirates had their heyday, their movie heyday and their book heyday, and it's pretty consistent. Pirate characteristics were the same in the beginning to the end.
I'm watching the comments now. I want to see how people vote. Pirates or ninjas?
Yeah, get it out, guys. Pirates or ninjas?
We should have asked that at the beginning.
I've seen that show where they jump from the hanging thing to the hanging thing, and I'm like, pirates are for me. So
They got bigger swords, anyways.
oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh, I get seasick too. I wouldn't actually want to be one, but I.
Okay, so
Okay.
one of our presenters and swag for all, and I was thinking about that. And yes, I am actually in a position to give away some Rocky Linux. So you get a Rocky Linux, and you get a Rocky Linux, and you get it's FOSS, guys. Everybody should be playing with it in a VM or on a Raspberry Pi. It's a gimme.
Dave, we'll send you some swag as well. So feel free to send that out to whoever you like and enjoy.
We got more ninjas than pirates, I'm sorry to say. Hey, guys, thank you. I am honored that you were able to spend time with us at all and so much. Thank you. Thank you to Jessica. Best to Rocky. I'm going to be a big cheerleader for you. And to some level, I will find a way to contribute to. It's been just one. I had every bit as much fun as you guys did. You're fun to learn from. If I were leaving total seminar,
having us hang out. We like it.
Which you would soundly reject, but
that was a lot of fun, Dave. Thank you, and everyone who's watching and in the chat. That was a lot of fun. I really appreciate how interactive it was and whatnot. So thank you.
All right, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to you guys. Thank you, Skip. Thank you, Greg. Best.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye. Now let's watch them be awkward for a minute while they figure out how to quit.
This is always the time in which you're like, yes. This is always the time where it's like, yeah, do we leave or do we just mute and wait and then go back into green room?
I'm just gonna do what have I got about? Oh, I got 2 minutes of the end of the show. I got nothing to do but say goodbyes to everybody. So I'm gonna do that. Guys, next week, that's the way I'm gonna do this. I'm just gonna do our usual shutdown stuff and talk about what we're doing next week and the following and do the grand departure here. So upcoming episodes next week, I have 2 developers coming in from Mix, MIXXX, the FOSS DJ software, runs on Linux boxes, runs on Windows boxes. We did an episode on how to install and use Mix. So now we're going to talk to a couple of the developers. The lead developer is not available. Mr. MIT Super Brilliant also has so many pulls on his time strings that he sent me a couple of his top developers. So we're going to talk to them. Then we got Christmas. And I don't know, Mike is going to do a regular show this Monday and on Wednesday. Then we've got Steve coming back the Wednesday after that on the 28th. And then we're going to close down drama on the 30th. But again, we got a replacement coming up. So as ever and always, first of all, my incredible gratitude to Greg Kurtzer and Skip Grube from Rocky Linux. They were wonderful. We will have them on again next year on Andromeda or whatever the new name is going to be. My thanks, of course, to Mike Myers, my former boss and now co-worker, and everybody at Total and National Cyber Group who so generously provide us with time and resources for us to get together here every week. My most heartfelt thanks goes to you and everyone who comes here to participate. I am Dave Rush, the senior instructor at Total Seminars and resident Pi specialist, wishing you a great weekend. Take care of each other, take serious steps to stay healthy, and if at all possible, call or visit your parents. And never forget, technology is great, but the greatest resource we have are you and I. And with that, good night. I will stop in on the Discord channel in a little while, and I'll see you on the AMAs next week. Until then, guys, stay online when I hit the button here. I am out of here. Later, guys. Okay.